Picture Sarah, a senior marketing director in Manhattan, standing at the crossroads of her evening. To her left, a corporate networking event buzzes with small talk about weekend plans and weather updates. To her right, a philosophy discussion group meets in a quiet bookstore, diving deep into questions that have challenged humanity for millennia. This moment of choice, seemingly insignificant, represents something far more profound than a simple scheduling decision. It embodies the very essence of what separates those who merely exist from those who truly thrive. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome while contemplating the deepest questions of human existence, understood that our lives are shaped not by grand gestures but by the accumulation of countless small choices. In his meditations, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Every decision we make, from the conversations we engage into the thoughts we entertain, becomes a building block in the architecture of our character. What if the secret to a more purposeful and fulfilling life lies not in what you choose to do, but in what you consciously choose to avoid? This revolutionary perspective challenges the modern American obsession with addition, adding more activities, more connections, more experiences to our already overflowing lives. Instead, intelligent people have discovered the profound power of subtraction, of strategic avoidance, of saying no to the good so they can say yes to the great. The ancient Stoics understood this principle intimately. They recognized that in a world filled with infinite distractions and endless options, wisdom lies in discernment. Seneca, the Roman statesman and philosopher, spent his days navigating the treacherous waters of imperial politics while maintaining his philosophical principles. He learned that survival, and more importantly, flourishing, required the ability to distinguish between what deserves our attention and what should be consciously avoided. In today's hyper-connected world, this ancient wisdom has never been more relevant. We face an unprecedented assault on our attention, our values, and our peace of mind. Social media algorithms compete for our focus, news cycles manufacture urgency, and societal pressures demand conformity. Yet within this chaos lies an opportunity, the same opportunity that Sarah faces in that Manhattan moment, to choose differently. The intelligent individuals who navigate modern American life with grace and purpose have mastered 10 specific practices of avoidance. These aren't passive omissions but active choices, deliberate decisions to protect their mental energy, preserve their authentic selves, and pursue what the Stoics called eudaimonia, human flourishing. Today, we'll explore these 10 practices through the lens of Stoic philosophy, examining how ancient wisdom can guide modern choices. Each practice represents a conscious decision to swim against the current of contemporary culture, to choose depth over surface, substance over sensation, and wisdom over mere information. 1. The Discipline of Worthy Discourse. Marcus Chin, a financial analyst in Chicago's Loop District, finds himself trapped in the office break room every morning, listening to colleagues dissect last night's reality TV drama and debate whether it will rain this afternoon. While his coworkers seem energized by these exchanges, Marcus feels his mental energy draining away like water leaking from a cracked vessel. He recognizes what ancient Stoic philosophers understood centuries ago: not all conversations are created equal, and intelligent people must guard their most precious resource, their attention, with the vigilance of a fortress sentinel. Seneca, who navigated the complex social dynamics of Roman imperial court, wrote extensively about the company we keep and the conversations we engage in. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end, he observed, recognizing that choosing meaningful dialogue requires ending our participation in meaningless chatter. This principle guided his own social interactions as he deliberately sought conversations that challenged his thinking and elevated his understanding rather than simply filling time. The modern American workplace presents unique challenges to this Stoic principle. Open office environments, coffee machine conversations, and endless Slack channels create a constant stream of superficial interactions. Consider Maria, a software engineer in Austin who realized she was spending 2 hours daily engaged in discussions about weekend plans, sports scores, and celebrity gossip. When she calculated the annual cost, over 500 hours of her finite life, she experienced what she later called her Stoic awakening. Intelligent people like Maria understand that our brains function like sophisticated filtering systems, and what we allow to enter shapes our internal landscape. When we fill our minds with trivial information and shallow exchanges, we create less space for the profound thoughts and meaningful connections that fuel personal growth. Epictetus, himself a former slave who became one of history's most influential philosophers, taught that we must be as selective with our mental inputs as we are with our physical diet. The practice of avoiding meaningless interactions doesn't mean becoming antisocial or dismissive. Instead, it requires developing what the Stoics called phronesis, practical wisdom in social situations. Take David, a marketing director in Denver who transformed his networking approach. Rather than collecting business cards through small talk, he began asking deeper questions. What's the most challenging problem you're solving right now? Or what book has most influenced your thinking lately? These conversation starters immediately elevated the discourse and attracted like-minded individuals while naturally filtering out those seeking only superficial connection. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his personal journal that became the Meditations, reflected on the importance of surrounding himself with people who challenged his thinking. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, he wrote, understanding that we become similar to those with whom we regularly interact. This principle applies directly to our conversational choices. Engaging repeatedly in gossip makes us gossipers, while consistently participating in thoughtful dialogue develops our capacity for wisdom. The social media age has amplified the challenge of maintaining worthy discourse. Platforms designed to maximize engagement often reward the most inflammatory or trivial content. Sarah, a teacher in Portland, discovered that her daily scroll through social media feeds filled her mind with celebrity drama and political outrage, leaving little mental space for the creative lesson planning that energized her. By consciously choosing to replace her social media time with podcast conversations featuring historians, scientists, and philosophers, she noticed her own conversations becoming more substantive and engaging. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to associate with those who will make a better man of you. This ancient wisdom translates directly into modern conversational choices. Intelligent people actively seek out individuals who discuss ideas rather than events, who explore possibilities rather than limitations, who ask what if rather than what happened. They understand that meaningful dialogue serves as intellectual cross-training, strengthening their capacity for critical thinking and creative problem-solving. The discipline of worthy discourse also involves recognizing when to gracefully exit conversations that drain rather than energize. This requires developing what modern psychologists call conversational intelligence, the ability to assess whether an exchange is moving toward mutual understanding or simply reinforcing existing positions. When James, a consultant in San Francisco, notices a conversation devolving into complaint or gossip, he employs a simple Stoic technique. He asks himself whether this discussion aligns with his values and contributes to his growth. If not, he politely redirects or excuses himself. This selective approach to conversation creates a virtuous cycle. As intelligent people consistently engage in meaningful dialogue, they attract others who value depth over surface-level interaction. Their social circles gradually shift toward individuals who challenge, inspire, and elevate each other. The time once spent in trivial exchanges becomes available for conversations that genuinely matter, discussions that expand perspectives, solve problems, and build authentic connections that enrich life's journey. 2. The courage to embrace truth. Dr. Jennifer Rodriguez, a data scientist at a prominent Los Angeles tech company, discovered something uncomfortable while analyzing her company's algorithm. It was systematically amplifying misinformation to increase user engagement. The discovery challenged everything she believed about her employer's mission to connect the world. She faced a choice that intelligent people encounter daily: remain comfortably ignorant or courageously confront an inconvenient truth. This moment exemplifies what Epictetus taught his students in ancient Rome: it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. The Stoic philosophers understood that willful ignorance represents one of the greatest obstacles to human flourishing. Unlike simple lack of knowledge, willful ignorance involves the conscious choice to avoid information that might challenge our existing beliefs or force us to change our behavior. It's the difference between not knowing something and choosing not to know it. This distinction matters profoundly because it separates those who grow from those who stagnate. Consider Michael, a financial advisor in Manhattan who spent years recommending investment products without fully understanding their environmental impact. When climate research began revealing the long-term risks of fossil fuel investments, he faced an uncomfortable choice: dig deeper into this complex topic or continue operating with his existing knowledge. The Stoic path demanded courage, the courage to potentially discover that his professional recommendations needed fundamental revision. Seneca, who balanced philosophical pursuits with practical responsibilities as advisor to Emperor Nero, wrote extensively about intellectual honesty. The willing, destiny guides them. The unwilling, destiny drags them, he observed, recognizing that we can either embrace truth voluntarily or have reality imposed upon us through painful experience. This principle applies directly to our information consumption habits in the digital age. Modern American society presents unprecedented challenges to truth-seeking. We live in what psychologists call filter bubbles, algorithmic echo chambers that reinforce our existing beliefs while shielding us from contradictory information. Social media platforms, news outlets, and even search engines customize content based on our previous choices, creating the illusion that our perspectives represent universal truth. Intelligent people recognize this trap and actively work to escape it. Amanda, a nurse practitioner in Chicago who realized her social media feeds only showed medical information that confirmed her existing treatment approaches. Embracing the Stoic commitment to truth, she began following medical journals that challenged conventional wisdom, joining online forums where practitioners debated controversial topics, and attending conferences featuring speakers who disagreed with her positions. This intellectual courage led to improved patient outcomes as she incorporated evidence-based practices she might otherwise have missed. The Stoics taught that wisdom requires what they called epistemic humility, the recognition that our knowledge is always incomplete and potentially flawed. Marcus Aurelius, despite holding ultimate power as Roman emperor, regularly questioned his own judgments and sought counsel from diverse advisors. How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, he wrote, while simultaneously emphasizing the importance of learning from others' experiences and perspectives. This balance, avoiding gossip while embracing learning, requires sophisticated discernment. Robert, a startup founder in Seattle, discovered this when investor feedback challenged his company's core assumptions. Rather than dismissing criticism as uninformed or biased, he applied Stoic principles by examining each critique objectively. Some feedback proved valuable, leading to product improvements, while other suggestions conflicted with his company's values. The key was approaching each piece of information with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Epictetus, drawing from his experience as both slave and teacher, understood that intellectual freedom requires constant vigilance. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it, he taught, recognizing that true wisdom shows itself through behavior rather than words. For modern Americans, this means actively seeking uncomfortable truths rather than simply claiming to value honesty. The courage to embrace truth extends beyond professional contexts into personal growth. Lisa, a marketing executive in Denver, realized she had been avoiding honest self-assessment for years. Influenced by Stoic practices of self-examination, she began journaling about her genuine motivations, fears, and limitations. This uncomfortable process revealed patterns of behavior that were undermining her relationships and career progress. The truth hurt initially, but it provided the foundation for meaningful change. Intelligent people understand that information has consequences. In our interconnected world, ignorance about climate change, economic trends, technological developments, or social issues can lead to decisions that harm ourselves and others. The Stoic commitment to virtue demands that we remain informed enough to act responsibly even when that knowledge challenges our comfort or convenience. The practice of embracing truth requires developing what philosophers call cognitive courage, the willingness to revise our beliefs when evidence demands it. This doesn't mean becoming paralyzed by uncertainty or constantly changing positions. Instead, it means holding our convictions firmly while remaining open to new information that might refine or redirect our understanding. As Seneca advised his student Lucilius, every change of fortune affects either our person or our possessions. The wise man is prepared for either. This preparation begins with the courage to see reality clearly, regardless of whether that reality aligns with our preferences or expectations. 3. The virtue of independent thought. Alex Chun, founder of a promising Seattle startup, sits across from potential investors who are pushing him to pivot his company toward cryptocurrency integration. Not because it aligns with his mission to improve healthcare accessibility, but because that's where the money is right now. The room buzzes with enthusiasm about following market trends. But Alex feels a familiar tension between external pressure and internal conviction. This moment captures the essence of what Marcus Aurelius faced daily as Roman emperor: the choice between popular opinion and personal integrity. The Stoic emperor wrote in his private journal how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself. This wasn't advice to ignore others entirely, but rather a recognition that true wisdom requires independent judgment rather than reflexive conformity. In our hyper-connected age, this ancient wisdom has become more relevant than ever. Consider the subtle but pervasive pressure to conform that permeates modern American life. From the clothes we wear to the political opinions we express, from the career paths we choose to the lifestyle we pursue, societal expectations create invisible boundaries around our thinking. Rachel, a marketing director in Austin, discovered this when she realized she had been unconsciously mimicking her colleagues' enthusiasm for certain brands, work methodologies, and even vacation destinations. Not because she genuinely preferred them, but because expressing different preferences felt socially risky. The Stoics understood that conformity often stems from fear of rejection, fear of standing out, fear of being wrong. Epictetus, who knew intimately the costs of powerlessness as a former slave, taught that true freedom comes from within. No one can hurt you without your permission, he declared, recognizing that our deepest liberty lies in our ability to think independently, regardless of external circumstances. This principle doesn't advocate for contrarianism, being different simply for the sake of being different. Instead, it calls for what philosophers term authentic autonomy, making choices based on careful reasoning and personal values rather than social pressure. When David, a software engineer in Denver, noticed his team automatically adopting the latest programming frameworks without evaluating their actual benefits, he began asking uncomfortable questions. Why are we choosing this approach? And what problem does this solve that our current system doesn't? His willingness to think independently initially created tension, but ultimately led to better technical decisions and saved the company significant resources. This exemplifies how independent thought serves not just personal integrity but collective benefit. As Marcus Aurelius observed, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee." The historical examples of independent thinkers who transformed human understanding remain instructive. Galileo faced house arrest for defending heliocentrism against religious orthodoxy. Einstein challenged Newton's physics despite centuries of accepted wisdom. Socrates chose death rather than abandon his philosophical questioning. These individuals shared a common trait. They valued truth over comfort, understanding over acceptance, and intellectual integrity over social approval. Modern independent thinking faces different but equally challenging obstacles. Social media algorithms create echo chambers that reinforce existing beliefs while making dissent seem rare or extreme. Corporate cultures often reward conformity and punish questioning, even when that questioning might prevent costly mistakes. Political polarization makes independent positions seem like betrayal to both sides. Sarah, a teacher in Portland, experienced this when she began questioning certain educational practices that her district had adopted without evidence of effectiveness. Rather than simply complying or openly rebelling, she applied Stoic principles by conducting her own research, consulting diverse sources, and gradually building a case for alternative approaches. Her independent thinking led to pilot programs that improved student outcomes while respecting institutional constraints. The Stoics taught that independent thought requires constant practice and vigilance. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to regularly examine his beliefs and assumptions. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. This process of intellectual renewal prevents our thinking from becoming stagnant or purely reactive to external pressures. Independent thought also requires what psychologists call cognitive humility, the recognition that our independent conclusions might be wrong. This paradox, thinking independently while remaining open to correction, represents sophisticated intellectual maturity. Marcus, a consultant in Chicago, practices this by regularly seeking out perspectives that challenge his independent conclusions, not to abandon them automatically, but to test their strength through rigorous examination. The virtue of independent thought extends beyond major life decisions into daily choices. It means questioning why we buy certain products, support particular causes, or hold specific opinions. It involves asking whether our choices reflect genuine preference or unconscious conformity. This doesn't require constant rebellion against social norms, but rather conscious evaluation of which norms serve our authentic values and which merely reflect unexamined habit. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This power over our minds includes the freedom to think independently, to question assumptions, and to chart our own intellectual course while remaining open to wisdom from others. The courage to think independently, guided by Stoic principles of reason and virtue, becomes not just a personal practice but a contribution to society's collective wisdom and progress. 4. The Fortress of Inner Tranquility. Attorney Jessica Martinez sits in her Boston law office, staring at an email from opposing counsel filled with personal attacks questioning her competence, integrity, and professional judgment. Her initial reaction, a surge of anger and wounded pride, threatens to derail her entire day. But Jessica has learned something that transforms this moment from potential devastation into opportunity. The ancient Stoic principle that other people's words and actions reveal more about them than about us. As Epictetus taught his students, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. The practice of not taking things personally represents one of the most liberating yet challenging aspects of Stoic philosophy. It requires recognizing that most human behavior stems from the actor's internal state rather than external circumstances. When someone criticizes us harshly, acts dismissively, or responds with hostility, their reaction often reflects their own fears, insecurities, past experiences, or current pressures rather than an objective assessment of our worth or actions. Consider Marcus, a project manager in San Francisco who discovered this principle during a particularly difficult team meeting. When a colleague publicly criticized his presentation with unusual vehemence, Marcus's first instinct was to defend himself and counterattack. Instead, he paused and applied Stoic reasoning. What might be driving this person's reaction? Later, he learned that his colleague was facing intense pressure from his own supervisor and had received harsh feedback about his recent work. The criticism wasn't really about Marcus's presentation, it was displaced anxiety and frustration. This insight aligns perfectly with Marcus Aurelius's observation: how much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it. The Roman emperor understood that our emotional reactions to others' behavior often cause more suffering than the original actions themselves. When we take things personally, we multiply our pain by adding our own interpretations and judgments to whatever external event triggered our response. The Stoics taught what they called the dichotomy of control, the fundamental distinction between what we can and cannot influence. We cannot control other people's words, actions, or opinions about us. We can control our interpretations, responses, and the meaning we assign to their behavior. This principle transforms potentially devastating interactions into opportunities for practicing wisdom and emotional resilience. Take Dr. Patricia Williams, an emergency room physician in Miami who faces criticism from patients, families, and colleagues daily. Early in her career, she internalized every complaint and harsh word, leading to burnout and self-doubt. Studying Stoic philosophy helped her understand that people in crisis often lash out at the nearest target, not because of anything she did wrong, but because they're processing fear, pain, and helplessness. This realization allowed her to respond with compassion rather than defensiveness, improving both her emotional well-being and patient care. The practice of not taking things personally requires developing what psychologists call emotional regulation, the ability to experience feelings without being controlled by them. Seneca, who navigated the treacherous politics of imperial Rome, wrote extensively about this skill: the willing, destiny guides them. The unwilling, destiny drags them. He understood that we can choose our emotional responses rather than being passive victims of circumstance. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or dismissive of legitimate feedback. Instead, it involves developing the discernment to distinguish between constructive criticism that can help us grow and reactive behavior that reflects the other person's internal state. When Robert, a startup founder in Denver, receives investor feedback, he asks himself, is this person trying to help me improve, or are they processing their own frustrations and fears? This question helps him extract valuable insights while avoiding unnecessary emotional turmoil. The Stoic approach to not taking things personally also involves understanding the concept of preferred indifference, external circumstances that we might prefer but don't ultimately determine our well-being. Other people's opinions of us fall into this category. While we might prefer approval and praise, our fundamental worth and happiness don't depend on external validation. As Epictetus taught, wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. Modern neuroscience supports this ancient wisdom. Research shows that our brains are wired to interpret ambiguous social situations as threats, leading to defensive reactions that often escalate conflicts unnecessarily. By consciously applying Stoic principles, we can override these automatic responses and choose more constructive interpretations. When Lisa, a marketing executive in Chicago, receives what seems like a dismissive email from a client, she now asks herself, what else could this mean? Often, she discovers that the client was simply rushed, distracted, or dealing with their own challenges. The fortress of inner tranquility that Stoics cultivate doesn't make us indifferent to others or immune to feedback. Instead, it provides a stable foundation from which we can engage with the world more effectively. When we're not constantly defending our ego or seeking validation, we can focus on what truly matters, acting with virtue, contributing meaningfully, and maintaining our integrity regardless of external circumstances. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in his private journal, you can commit injustice by doing nothing. The inner tranquility that comes from not taking things personally frees us to act courageously and compassionately in the world. 5. The alchemy of obstacles. When Maria Gonzalez's Miami restaurant was forced to close during the pandemic, she faced what seemed like complete professional devastation. 20 years of building her dream business appeared to crumble overnight. While many entrepreneurs in her situation focused on the losses, the investment, the staff layoffs, the uncertain future, Maria chose a different path. She remembered reading Marcus Aurelius's profound insight. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Instead of dwelling on the problem, she began asking a transformative question. How can this obstacle become my teacher? This shift in perspective exemplifies what the Stoics called the discipline of desire, the practice of aligning our wants with reality rather than fighting against circumstances beyond our control. The ancient philosophers understood that problems are inevitable, but suffering is optional. The difference lies not in the obstacles we face, but in how we choose to perceive and respond to them. Consider James, a software engineer in Seattle whose startup failed spectacularly, leaving him with significant debt and a damaged professional reputation. His initial response was to ruminate endlessly on what went wrong: the bad hiring decisions, the market timing, the investor who backed out at the last minute. This mental loop kept him trapped in a state of paralysis, unable to move forward or learn from the experience. Then he discovered the Stoic practice of objective representation, viewing situations without emotional coloring or personal narrative. Instead of, "I'm a failure who made terrible decisions," James learned to think, "I participated in a business venture that didn't achieve its intended outcomes, and now I have data about what approaches don't work in this market." This reframing transformed his relationship with the failure from personal catastrophe to valuable education. Within 6 months, he had launched a new venture that avoided the mistakes of his previous company and eventually succeeded beyond his original dreams. The Stoics taught that obstacles serve as what they called spiritual exercises, opportunities to practice virtue and build character. Epictetus, who overcame the extreme obstacle of slavery to become one of history's most influential philosophers, understood this principle intimately. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it, he taught, recognizing that our response to difficulties reveals our true character more than our words or intentions. This principle applies directly to modern professional challenges. When Dr. Sarah Chun, a cardiologist in Boston, faced a malpractice lawsuit despite providing excellent care, she could have allowed the stress and injustice to consume her energy and undermine her confidence. Instead, she applied Stoic reasoning. What can this situation teach me about communication, documentation, and patient relations? The lawsuit ultimately led her to develop better systems for patient education and informed consent, improving her practice and helping her colleagues avoid similar challenges. The alchemy of obstacles requires what Marcus Aurelius called the view from above, the ability to see our current problems within a larger context of time and significance. When we're trapped in immediate difficulties, everything feels overwhelming and permanent. But the Stoic perspective reminds us that all circumstances are temporary and that our response to them shapes who we become. Take Michael, a financial advisor in Denver whose investment recommendations lost significant value during a market downturn. Rather than focusing on client complaints and damaged relationships, he used the crisis as an opportunity to deepen his understanding of risk management and economic cycles. He spent months studying historical market patterns, consulting with economists, and developing more robust investment strategies. When markets recovered, his clients not only regained their losses but achieved better long-term returns because of the lessons learned during the difficult period. The Stoics distinguished between what they called initial impressions and considered judgments. When we first encounter an obstacle, our initial impression is usually negative. We see loss, inconvenience, or threat. But intelligent people pause before accepting this first reaction as truth. They ask, what opportunities might this situation create? And how can I use this challenge to develop skills, relationships, or insights that wouldn't be possible otherwise? This practice requires developing what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the ability to emerge from difficulties stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. Research shows that people who successfully navigate major challenges often report increased appreciation for life, stronger relationships, greater personal strength, and clearer priorities. These benefits don't happen automatically. They require the conscious choice to extract value from adversity. Seneca, who survived political exile and personal tragedies, wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Every change of fortune affects either our person or our possessions. The wise man is prepared for either." This preparation involves cultivating the mental flexibility to find opportunity within apparent disaster and the emotional resilience to maintain hope during difficult periods. The alchemy of obstacles doesn't mean pretending that problems aren't real or painful. It means refusing to let difficulties define our future possibilities. As Maria discovered when she transformed her restaurant closure into an opportunity to launch a successful catering business, obstacles often redirect us toward paths we never would have chosen, but that ultimately prove more fulfilling than our original plans. 6. The wisdom of receptive learning. When David Kim received his annual performance review at a Denver marketing firm, his supervisor's words hit like a physical blow. Your presentations lack engagement, your strategic thinking needs development, and your collaboration skills require significant improvement. David's first instinct was to defend himself, to explain why each criticism was unfair or misunderstood. But something deeper stirred within him, a recognition that this moment offered something far more valuable than the comfort of self-justification. As Seneca wrote to his student Lucilius, every change of fortune affects either our person or our possessions. The wise man is prepared for either. The Stoic practice of receptive learning transforms criticism from threat into treasure. This ancient wisdom recognizes that feedback, even when delivered imperfectly or harshly, contains seeds of growth that can flourish if we provide the right conditions. The alternative, defensive rejection of outside perspectives, leads to what the Stoics called the prison of self-deception, where we remain trapped by our own limitations because we refuse to acknowledge they exist. Consider Dr. Rachel Martinez, an emergency room physician in Phoenix who prided herself on her clinical expertise. When a nurse questioned her treatment approach for a cardiac patient, Rachel's initial reaction was indignation. How dare someone with less training challenge her medical judgment? But the Stoic principle of intellectual humility prompted her to pause and consider, what if this person sees something I'm missing? That moment of openness led to a crucial insight that improved the patient's outcome and forever changed Rachel's approach to collaborative medicine. Epictetus, drawing from his experience as both slave and teacher, understood that true freedom comes from our willingness to learn and grow. It's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows, he taught, recognizing that our egos need to be right often becomes the greatest obstacle to becoming better. This principle applies with particular force to feedback situations where our defensive reactions can blind us to valuable insights. The Stoics distinguished between what they called preferred indifference and true goods. External praise and criticism fall into the first category. We might prefer approval, but our fundamental well-being doesn't depend on it. True goods include wisdom, virtue, and character development, all of which can be enhanced through receptive learning. When we understand this distinction, feedback becomes less threatening because our core identity isn't at stake. Take Jennifer, a startup founder in Austin whose investors delivered brutal feedback about her company's direction. Instead of viewing their criticism as a personal attack, she applied the Stoic practice of objective representation, examining their concerns without emotional coloring. They're not saying I'm worthless, she realized. They're saying my current strategy isn't working. This reframing allowed her to extract valuable insights about market positioning and customer needs that ultimately saved her company. The wisdom of receptive learning requires developing what psychologists call growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. This aligns perfectly with the Stoic emphasis on continuous self-improvement. Marcus Aurelius, despite holding ultimate power as Roman emperor, regularly sought counsel from advisors and philosophers, understanding that wisdom comes from many sources, not just our own experience. However, receptive learning doesn't mean accepting all feedback uncritically. The Stoics taught the importance of discernment, the ability to distinguish between constructive criticism and destructive attacks. When Michael, a consultant in Chicago, receives feedback, he asks himself 3 questions. Is this person trying to help me improve? Do they have relevant expertise or perspective? And what specific actions could I take based on this input? This filter helps him benefit from valuable insights while avoiding unnecessary emotional turmoil from poorly motivated criticism. The practice of receptive learning also involves what the Stoics called premeditation of evils, mentally preparing for difficult feedback so we can respond with wisdom rather than react with emotion. Before important meetings or presentations, intelligent people like Sarah, a teacher in Portland, mentally rehearse receiving criticism. If someone challenges my methods, how will I respond? This preparation creates emotional space for learning rather than defending. Seneca emphasized that receptive learning requires humility, not self-deprecation, but accurate self-assessment. As long as you live, keep learning how to live, he advised, recognizing that growth continues throughout our lives. This perspective transforms criticism from evidence of failure into proof of our ongoing development. When we view ourselves as works in progress rather than finished products, feedback becomes welcome fuel for improvement rather than unwelcome judgment of our worth. The wisdom of receptive learning extends beyond formal feedback situations into daily interactions. Intelligent people actively seek out perspectives that challenge their thinking, surrounding themselves with individuals who feel comfortable offering honest insights. They create what psychologists call psychological safety environments where others feel encouraged to share difficult truths because they know these insights will be received with gratitude rather than defensiveness. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in his private journal, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When faced with harsh criticism, the Stoic response isn't to attack back but to extract whatever value exists and use it for personal growth. This approach transforms potential conflicts into opportunities for development and builds the character that leads to lasting success and fulfillment. 7. The Discipline of Rational Response. Dr. Amanda Torres stands in the Phoenix emergency room at 2 a.m. facing a decision that could determine whether a critically injured patient lives or dies. The family is screaming, demanding immediate surgery. Her resident is panicking, pushing for the most aggressive intervention. Her own adrenaline surges as monitors beep frantically around her. In this moment of extreme pressure, Amanda draws upon a principle that has guided wise decision-makers for over 2 millennia, the Stoic discipline of rational response. As Epictetus taught, wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants, and the greatest wealth is the ability to think clearly when emotions threaten to overwhelm judgment. The ancient Stoics understood that our emotions, while natural and often valuable, can become dangerous masters if we allow them to drive our decisions. They distinguished between experiencing emotions and being controlled by them, a subtle but crucial difference that separates reactive individuals from those who respond with wisdom. This principle becomes especially critical in high-stakes situations where poor decisions can have lasting consequences. Consider Robert, a financial advisor in Manhattan who received a panicked call from a client during a market crash. The client wanted to sell everything immediately, convinced that further losses would destroy his retirement. Robert felt his own anxiety rising as he watched portfolio values plummet in real time. His emotional brain screamed, "Act now," but his Stoic training prompted a different response: pause, breathe, and engage rational analysis. He asked himself, what would I advise if I weren't feeling this fear? The answer was clear: market volatility is temporary, but panic selling creates permanent losses. By maintaining rational perspective, he helped his client avoid a decision that would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Stoics taught what they called the dichotomy of control, the fundamental principle that we can control our thoughts and responses but not external events. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his personal journal while managing the vast Roman Empire, reflected, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This insight becomes practical wisdom when applied to emotional decision-making. The discipline of rational response requires developing what modern neuroscience calls emotional regulation, the ability to pause between stimulus and response. When Lisa, a startup founder in Seattle, received news that her biggest client was terminating their contract, her initial reaction was panic followed by anger. Instead of immediately calling the client or making hasty decisions about layoffs, she applied a Stoic technique, the view from above. She imagined herself looking down at the situation from a great height, seeing it as one event in a longer timeline rather than a catastrophic ending. This perspective shift allowed her to recognize opportunities she had missed in her emotional state. The client's departure freed up resources to pursue a more promising market segment, and the crisis motivated her team to innovate in ways they never would have attempted while comfortable. What initially appeared as disaster became the catalyst for the company's most successful pivot. Seneca, who navigated the treacherous politics of imperial Rome while maintaining his philosophical principles, wrote extensively about emotional decision-making. The willing, destiny guides them. The unwilling, destiny drags them. He understood that we can either choose our responses consciously or be driven by unconscious emotional reactions that often lead to regret. The practice of rational response involves several specific techniques that intelligent people cultivate. First is the pause principle, creating space between emotional trigger and action. When Michael, a project manager in Denver, receives harsh criticism from his supervisor, he has learned to say, "Let me think about this and get back to you." This simple phrase buys time for his rational mind to engage before his defensive emotions take control. Second is objective representation, describing situations without emotional coloring or personal narrative. Instead of "my boss is attacking me unfairly," Michael learns to think, "My supervisor is expressing concerns about my recent performance." This reframing removes the emotional charge and allows for more productive problem solving. Third is consequence analysis, mentally fast-forwarding to examine the likely outcomes of different response options. When Dr. Sarah Chin, a cardiologist in Boston, faces pressure to recommend an expensive procedure that may not be necessary, she asks herself, "If I choose based on fear of malpractice rather than medical evidence, what are the long-term consequences for my patient, my integrity, and my profession?" The Stoics also emphasized the importance of physical practices that support emotional regulation. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, and mindfulness meditation all enhance our capacity for rational decision-making. Marcus Aurelius began each day with philosophical reflection, preparing his mind for the challenges ahead. Modern research confirms that these practices literally change brain structure, strengthening the prefrontal cortex responsible for executive function while reducing the amygdala's reactive responses. The discipline of rational response doesn't eliminate emotions, it harnesses them as information while preventing them from hijacking our judgment. As Epictetus taught his students, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. The ultimate test of Stoic wisdom isn't what we know intellectually, but how we respond when pressure mounts and stakes are high. 8. The guardian of mental clarity. Jessica Williams, an investigative journalist in Atlanta, realized her relationship with information had become toxic when she found herself scrolling through social media at 11 p.m., consuming her fifth news article about political outrage while her mind raced with anxiety about events completely beyond her control. The irony wasn't lost on her. As someone whose profession required clear thinking and accurate information processing, she had allowed mindless media consumption to cloud her judgment and drain her mental energy. This moment of recognition led her to embrace what Marcus Aurelius understood centuries ago. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The ancient Stoics lived in a world without digital media, yet they understood the fundamental principle that what we allow into our minds shapes our thoughts, emotions, and ultimately our actions. They taught the importance of being selective about external influences, recognizing that our mental landscape requires the same careful cultivation as a garden. Just as we wouldn't allow weeds to overrun our physical spaces, intelligent people refuse to let mental weeds, misinformation, sensationalism, and trivial content overrun their consciousness. Consider Mark, a software engineer in San Francisco who discovered that his daily news consumption was affecting his work performance and personal relationships. He would arrive at the office already agitated by morning headlines, carry that emotional residue into meetings, and find himself unable to focus on complex coding problems. The constant stream of crisis-oriented information had activated what psychologists call continuous partial attention, a state where we're always slightly distracted, never fully present to the task at hand. The Stoic solution involves what they called prosoc, continuous attention to the present moment and conscious choice about where to direct our focus. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." This principle applies directly to our relationship with information consumption. Intelligent people like Dr. Rachel Martinez, a pediatrician in Houston, have learned to distinguish between being informed and being overwhelmed. She realized that checking news updates throughout the day wasn't making her more knowledgeable, it was making her more anxious and less effective. Instead, she now dedicates 30 minutes each morning to reading carefully selected sources that provide substantive analysis rather than sensational headlines. This intentional approach keeps her informed about issues that affect her patients and profession while protecting her mental clarity for the work that truly matters. The Stoics taught that we must guard our minds against what they called false impressions, initial judgments that seem true but haven't been examined through reason. Modern media, designed to capture attention through emotional triggers, constantly presents us with false impressions. A single news story can make us believe that rare events are common, that complex issues have simple solutions, or that our personal safety is constantly threatened by distant events. Take David, a marketing executive in Chicago who noticed that his social media feeds were making him increasingly pessimistic about human nature and society's future. The algorithm had learned to show him content that generated strong emotional reactions, mostly outrage and fear. By consciously curating his information diet, seeking out sources that highlighted human progress, scientific breakthroughs, and positive social developments, he restored a more balanced and accurate worldview that enhanced both his personal well-being and professional creativity. The practice of mindful media consumption requires developing what the Stoics called the discipline of assent, the conscious choice about which thoughts and impressions to accept as true. Before consuming any piece of media, intelligent people ask themselves, will this information help me make better decisions, understand the world more accurately, or contribute more effectively to my community? If the answer is no, they choose to direct their attention elsewhere. This principle extends beyond news consumption to entertainment choices. Lisa, a teacher in Portland, realized that binge-watching television series was leaving her feeling mentally drained and emotionally manipulated. She began applying Stoic criteria to her entertainment choices, asking whether each show enriched her understanding, sparked meaningful conversations, or provided genuine relaxation rather than mere distraction. This shift freed up time and mental energy for reading, creative pursuits, and deeper relationships. The Stoics also emphasized the importance of diverse perspectives in forming accurate judgments. However, they distinguished between seeking diverse viewpoints and consuming information indiscriminately. Epictetus taught his students to be like skilled physicians who carefully examine symptoms before making diagnoses. Similarly, intelligent media consumers actively seek out multiple perspectives on important issues while filtering out sources that prioritize sensation over substance. Modern neuroscience supports ancient Stoic wisdom about attention and mental clarity. Research shows that constant media switching reduces our ability to focus deeply, impairs memory formation, and increases stress hormones. The brain literally rewires itself based on our attention patterns. If we constantly consume fragmented, emotionally charged information, we become less capable of sustained thinking and emotional regulation. The guardian of mental clarity also involves creating what psychologists call cognitive space, periods of time free from information input that allow for reflection, creativity, and genuine rest. As Marcus Aurelius practiced daily meditation and journaling, modern practitioners might establish technology-free zones, regular digital Sabbaths, or contemplative practices that restore mental equilibrium and perspective. 9. The craftsman of character. Maria Santos, a high school teacher in Houston, sits at her kitchen table at 5:30 a.m., surrounded by books on financial literacy, educational psychology, and mindfulness meditation. While her colleagues sleep, she dedicates the first hour of each day to what she calls character construction, the deliberate cultivation of skills, knowledge, and virtues that extend far beyond her professional requirements. This daily practice embodies what Seneca taught his student Lucilius: as long as you live, keep learning how to live. Maria understands that personal development isn't a luxury or hobby. It's the foundation upon which all meaningful achievement rests. The Stoic philosophers viewed life as a continuous workshop where we craft ourselves into the people we aspire to become. Unlike modern self-help culture that often promises quick fixes and instant transformation, the Stoics understood that character development requires the same patience, skill, and dedication that master craftsmen bring to their finest work. Marcus Aurelius, despite holding ultimate power as Roman emperor, spent time each morning examining his thoughts and actions, constantly refining his character through philosophical reflection and practical application. Consider Robert Chun, a software engineer in Seattle who realized that his technical expertise, while valuable, represented only one dimension of human capability. Inspired by Stoic teachings about virtue and wisdom, he began systematically developing what psychologists call multiple intelligences: emotional, social, creative, and spiritual capacities that enhance both personal fulfillment and professional effectiveness. He enrolled in improvisational theater classes to improve his communication skills, studied behavioral economics to understand decision-making, and practiced meditation to develop emotional regulation. The Stoics taught that true wealth consists not in external possessions, but in internal capabilities, the skills, knowledge, and character traits that no external force can take away. Epictetus, who lost his freedom as a slave but gained immortal influence as a philosopher, embodied this principle. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it, he taught, recognizing that personal development must translate into practical action rather than remaining merely theoretical knowledge. This holistic approach to growth distinguishes intelligent people from those who focus narrowly on single aspects of development. Take Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a cardiologist in Miami who recognized that her medical expertise needed to be complemented by financial literacy, leadership skills, and creative expression. She began studying investment principles to secure her family's future, took management courses to better lead her medical team, and returned to the piano playing she had abandoned in medical school. Each area of development reinforced the others, creating what psychologists call positive spillover effects. The Stoics emphasized that personal development serves not just individual benefit but social good. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee." When we develop our capabilities, we become more valuable contributors to our families, communities, and society. This principle transforms self-improvement from selfish indulgence into moral obligation. Modern neuroscience supports the Stoic approach to comprehensive development. Research shows that learning new skills literally rewires the brain, creating neural pathways that enhance cognitive flexibility and emotional resilience. When David, a financial advisor in Denver, began studying philosophy, learning Spanish, and practicing martial arts simultaneously, he discovered that each pursuit enhanced his performance in the others. The discipline required for physical training improved his focus for language study, while philosophical reflection enhanced his ability to counsel clients through financial difficulties. The craftsman of character also understands the importance of what the Stoics called preferred indifference, external goods that we might reasonably pursue but that don't determine our fundamental well-being. Health, financial security, and social connections fall into this category. Intelligent people like Sarah, a marketing executive in Boston, invest in these areas not because they guarantee happiness, but because they provide the foundation for pursuing virtue and wisdom more effectively. Physical health receives particular attention from those who understand its connection to mental clarity and emotional stability. The Stoics viewed the body as the soul's instrument, requiring proper maintenance for optimal performance. Regular exercise, proper nutrition, and adequate sleep aren't vanity projects but practical necessities for anyone serious about personal development. When Lisa, a startup founder in Portland, began prioritizing her physical health, she discovered that her decision-making improved, her stress tolerance increased, and her creative problem-solving abilities expanded. Financial literacy represents another crucial area of development that many highly educated people neglect. The Stoics taught that while money isn't the highest good, financial instability can create unnecessary stress and limit our ability to act virtuously. Understanding budgeting, investing, and economic principles provides the security that allows for greater focus on meaningful pursuits. As Seneca, who was both philosopher and successful businessman, demonstrated, financial competence and philosophical wisdom can complement rather than conflict with each other. Creative development serves what the Stoics called the discipline of desire, the cultivation of appreciation for beauty, meaning, and transcendence, whether through art, music, writing, or other creative pursuits. Intelligent people understand that creativity enhances problem-solving abilities, provides emotional outlets, and connects us to sources of meaning beyond material success. The craftsman of character approaches development systematically, setting specific goals, tracking progress, and adjusting strategies based on results. This methodical approach reflects the Stoic emphasis on reason and discipline while maintaining the flexibility to adapt as circumstances change. 10. The art of prudent courage. When Elena Rodriguez received an offer to expand her Portland coffee roastery into 3 new locations during the economic uncertainty of 2023, she faced the kind of decision that separates intelligent risk-takers from reckless gamblers. The opportunity promised significant growth, but the timing felt precarious with rising interest rates, supply chain disruptions, and changing consumer habits. Rather than making an impulsive decision based on excitement or fear, Elena applied what Marcus Aurelius called the discipline of action, the practice of moving forward with courage while exercising prudent judgment. Confine yourself to the present, the philosopher-emperor advised, recognizing that wise action requires balancing immediate realities with long-term consequences. The Stoic approach to risk-taking differs fundamentally from both reckless abandon and paralyzing caution. It involves what ancient philosophers called practical wisdom, the ability to discern when bold action serves virtue and when restraint demonstrates greater courage. This nuanced understanding recognizes that avoiding all risks can be as dangerous as taking unnecessary ones, because growth, innovation, and meaningful contribution often require stepping beyond our comfort zones. Consider James Park, a tech entrepreneur in Austin who spent 2 years developing a revolutionary app while working full-time at a stable corporate job. When venture capitalists offered funding that would require him to quit his position and commit fully to the startup, he faced a classic risk-reward decision. The Stoic framework guided his analysis. He examined his motivations. Was this driven by ego or genuine value creation? Assessed his resources. Could he survive financially if the venture failed? And considered the broader impact. Would success benefit others beyond himself? The Stoics taught that courage without wisdom becomes recklessness, while wisdom without courage becomes cowardice. Seneca, who navigated the dangerous political waters of imperial Rome while building substantial wealth through business ventures, understood this balance intimately. The willing, destiny guides them. The unwilling, destiny drags them, he wrote, recognizing that we can either make conscious choices about our risks or have risk imposed upon us by circumstances beyond our control. Intelligent risk assessment begins with what the Stoics called objective representation, seeing situations clearly without emotional distortion. When Dr. Michael Chen, a cardiologist in Chicago, considered leaving his hospital position to start an independent practice, his initial analysis was clouded by frustration with administrative bureaucracy and excitement about entrepreneurial freedom. Applying Stoic principles, he stepped back to examine the decision more objectively. What were the actual financial requirements? What skills would he need to develop? How would the change affect his family and patients? This analytical approach revealed both opportunities and challenges he had initially overlooked. The independence would allow for more personalized patient care and potentially higher income, but it would also require developing business management skills and accepting greater financial uncertainty. By seeing this situation clearly, he could make an informed choice rather than an emotional reaction. The Stoics emphasized the importance of contingency planning, what they called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This practice involves mentally rehearsing potential setbacks, not to cultivate pessimism, but to build resilience and prepare alternative strategies. When Sarah Kim, a marketing consultant in Denver, decided to leave her agency job to start her own firm, she spent months planning for various scenarios. What if her first major client canceled their contract? What if economic conditions worsened? What if her health insurance costs exceeded expectations? This preparation didn't prevent her from taking the risk, but it gave her confidence that she could handle whatever challenges arose. As Marcus Aurelius noted, the universe is transformation, our life is what our thoughts make it. By thinking through potential difficulties in advance, we transform them from paralyzing fears into manageable challenges. The art of prudent courage also involves seeking diverse perspectives before making significant decisions. The Stoics valued counsel from wise advisors while maintaining ultimate responsibility for their choices. When Robert Martinez, a restaurant owner in Miami, considered expanding during the pandemic, he consulted with other business owners, financial advisors, and industry experts. He didn't delegate his decision-making, but he gathered information that helped him see blind spots in his own analysis. Epictetus taught that we should focus on what we can control while accepting what we cannot. In risk assessment, this means concentrating our energy on factors we can influence: our preparation, our response to challenges, our commitment to learning from outcomes, rather than external variables like market conditions or competitor actions. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it, he advised, understanding that courage shows itself through action, not words. The Stoic approach also considers the ethical dimensions of risk-taking. Will this decision contribute to human flourishing or merely personal gain? Does it align with our values and long-term character goals? When Lisa Thompson, a software developer in Seattle, received an offer to join a cryptocurrency startup, she evaluated not just the financial opportunity but the social impact of the technology and her comfort with the industry's environmental and regulatory challenges. The art of prudent courage ultimately recognizes that the greatest risk often lies in avoiding all risks, in choosing safety over growth, comfort over contribution, and certainty over possibility. As Seneca reminded his students, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. The Stoic Path Forward. As we conclude our exploration of Stoic wisdom, it's essential to reflect on the invaluable lessons we've uncovered together. From avoiding meaningless interactions to embracing truth, cultivating independent thought, and mastering the art of prudent courage, these principles are not merely philosophical concepts. They are practical tools for navigating the complexities of modern life. By embodying these Stoic teachings, we can cultivate resilience, clarity, and purpose in our daily lives. The journey of self-improvement is ongoing, and each of us has the potential to shape our character and impact the world around us. Just as the ancient Stoics emphasized the importance of continuous learning and personal growth, we too must commit to being lifelong students of life. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This reminder empowers us to take control of our thoughts and responses, allowing us to navigate challenges with grace and wisdom. Imagine waking up each day with a renewed commitment to living intentionally, choosing conversations that inspire, embracing discomfort in the pursuit of knowledge, and acting with courage in the face of uncertainty. The Stoic path is one of deliberate action, guided by a commitment to personal values and a desire to contribute meaningfully to our communities. As you step forward into your daily life, consider incorporating these Stoic practices into your routine. Engage in meaningful conversations, seek out discussions that challenge your thinking and broaden your perspective. Surround yourself with individuals who inspire you to grow. Embrace truth, approach uncomfortable truths with curiosity rather than fear. Use them as stepping stones for personal growth and improvement. Cultivate independent thought, resist the pressure to conform. Trust your reasoning and embrace the uniqueness of your perspective. Practice emotional regulation, develop the ability to respond to challenges with clarity rather than impulse. Use techniques like mindfulness and reflection to maintain your inner peace. Seek continuous improvement, commit to lifelong learning across multiple dimensions: emotional, intellectual, and social. Remember, the Stoic path is not about achieving perfection but about striving for progress. As you embrace these principles, you'll find that your capacity for resilience, wisdom, and fulfillment will expand, allowing you to navigate the complexities of modern life with grace. If you found value in this exploration of Stoic philosophy, we invite you to join our community here at Stoic Vivu. By subscribing to our channel, you'll gain access to more insights, practical advice, and inspiration to help you live a more meaningful and intentional life. Don't forget to like and share this video with friends and family who may also benefit from these teachings. Together, we can spread the wisdom of Stoicism and empower one another to lead lives rich in purpose and fulfillment. Thank you for being part of this journey, and remember, the Stoic path is not just a philosophy, it's a way of life. Let's walk it together.